There are lots of great makes. These happen to be Winsor and Newton. And the colors down here, I think what I'll do is I will approach them as the 2 hours go on, because I go through the whole lot now and it might get lost a little bit. But just down here, these 2 colors, which I'll talk about, I've added, since anyone who's done sessions with me will have seen there, just two colors, and I'll talk about those and why I use those. So good quality paints here, and most of them are translucent, but not by all means. So that's the paints. I've got a number of brushes. Here, I'll show you. I've got lots of brushes all sort of in here, but I'm using today these 3 brushes. Let's move this picture out of the way for a moment. And one of them is a what I call a mop. It picks up a lot of water, and it's also goes to a very fine point. But there are lots of different types of mops. Here's another one. This is squirrel, but imitation squirrel is a very good one as well. In fact, this is an imitation squirrel one here, which is really nice as well. I've just started using it. So I'll use that mop. Lots of water it picks up, and it also flicks itself out to a sharp point.
Mike, could you move everything up a bit slightly, please? Yes,
let's go up a bit. Let's move this out of the way. Is that all right?
Yeah, that's better.
I'll just get this whole painting in here. That's okay? Yeah, I think you've got, as far as I see it, that's got everything here. So this is also a squirrel, but an imitation squirrel would be a good one. It's just smaller. It picks up a lot of water, and it also goes to a point. And then lastly, I've got this synthetic rigger brush, for very fine lines in the main. But those are the 3 I think I'm going to be using today. So we've spoken about the paints and the brushes. Yeah, and my palette is a tin palette, and I squeeze my paints in here from tubes. You could use pans, these little pans of different sizes, but I've for a long time, I've always done that, squeeze my paints in out of tubes. And lastly, the paper I'm using is a watercolor paper. It's in that it is a rag content. It's made primarily from rag, and it's 300 grams or a weight, or 140 pounds. This particular make is Saunders watercolor paper, and the surface I tend to use more often than not is cold press or not. You basically have a rough surface, which is rough, they call it rough, or you have a shiny surface, which is normally known as hot press. Something in between the two is known as not, N-O-T, or cold press. So it's got some sort of texture to it, but not as much as a rough one. Okay, and that comes down to preference really, but that's what I'm tending to use mostly. So I'll be drawing with a soft pencil like this one. It's a 4B, but really I quite like soft pencils. They tend to rub out a little bit better if you need to do so. I suppose you could say that part of the first step is choosing what it is you're going to paint. In our case, it will be from a photograph, but it might be that you are outside painting on plein air, as it's called. And as well as choosing the image that you're going to go for, working out how you're going to compose it on your piece of paper, and then making a drawing. So all of that I'm calling the first step, and that's what we're going to do now. And I'd like to begin that by just talking about our source picture, telling you why I chose it, talking about how I'm going to translate it, the composition, to the paper here, and then making that drawing. And what I suggest you do is that, if you haven't already started, is that you, whenever you feel okay with it, is that you begin working along with me, because I will always give you time to catch up at the end. But I'm just going to talk for a little bit longer about this before I start making my drawing. And the drawing isn't particularly difficult, I don't think, this one. I got this picture from the internet. I think I've seen it somewhere before. I mean, it's quite obviously an old barn, and I'm pretty sure it's in America. So it looks in a fairly dilapidated state. But the actual shape and the idea of the barn is what attracted me. However, I would be very happy to sit there with a sketchbook or whatever and draw it as I see it here. But in order to take it on and make a painting out of it, I thought I needed to just doctor it in a way and add one or two little things. I think the main thing I wanted to add was I wanted to give it a certain brightness, and an autumnal scene is what, or a scene of the fall is what I had in mind. So that's what I'm going to do with this. And you may have seen my practice painting that Lois put out earlier on that. So I'm going to do that, but I'm also going to change a few things. I think I'll need to change the sky to fit in with this sort of brighter autumnal aspect. I'm going to need to change, this looks as if it was taken sometime in the summer. So the colors of the trees and things like that, or where I put them, I'm going to change. I'm probably the biggest change I'm going to make is I'm going to play around with the foreground a bit. I'm going to use the idea of these fence posts, but shift them around a little bit. And as well as bringing the barn back into some kind of use, albeit an old barn, I want to add a figure to that. I think a figure will help to give it a sense of scale, and also a sense that there's a story going on. Someone is involved with the barn. I'm going to have a man with a wheelbarrow moving stuff around in front of the barn. But much of the picture I'm going to keep much the same. This line here where we see the bottom of the barn is something that I'm probably going to keep much the same. And the person who photographed this, I reckon their eye level is about here, where I'm holding my paintbrush. So up here a little bit, and I'm going to keep that same sort of eye level. So whoever was looking at this is looking up at this from that level of their eye, and looking down a little bit from this level. We'll talk about that as the drawing and the painting progresses. So that's what I have in mind. I think the other thing I just want to point out is that with the light coming down from the right, as I look at it down here, I'm going to emphasize that fact that the light is coming down here, which is going to put a lot of this area here in light, and is going to create a contrast with the shadow here, and that is maybe being cast. So quite a few changes, particularly to do with the light, I'm planning on doing with this. This line I spoke about here, it is quite important just to be aware of that, because I kind of want to know where that is going to be on my page. I've got an idea. It's going to be something like that. Yeah, there's going to be more space at the top. So, and if you take the top of the barn here, I'm probably going to give more room here then here. At the moment, it's sort of down the middle. So I'm just going to juggle it a little bit. Let's see how it goes. Now, when you do your drawing, you choose your own composition. You don't need to follow me exactly. You might decide that you want to do it slightly differently, particularly when it comes to drawing the barn. So I'm going to do something like, let's just see. Yeah, so I'm drawing quite heavily to we'll see how it goes. I might need to rub it out in a moment. Let's do something like that. This angle at the top of the barn is quite steep because of the perspective of the barn is going away from us. So we'll put that in here, and let's just get an idea that the size of the roof. Let's something like something like that. Just a little tip here, which will be useful. And this is whether you're drawing from a photograph or you're outside. If you want to know quite what the angle of the barn, the top of the barn is going away, or this bit that slopes down here, it's quite useful just to hold up a pencil up where it is and just bring it to where I want to draw it. Can you see? And similarly, if I do it with this one, I'll hold it up there, either on the photograph or on the real thing, and take it across to here. In fact, it shows that I can make it steeper, that angle, a little bit, which I'll do. Just, there we go. Something like that. And particularly when you're dealing with buildings and lines and perspective and all of that's quite a useful thing. So let's go back to the drawing here. I'll put this back up here. It's going to be something like that. Anyway, something like that. And then this building runs down. I mean, really, you do whatever you want because no one's going to be checking it. It's going to do something like that, say. Yeah. There we are. There is kind of my barn. You could spend an awful long time drawing in exactly every little broken piece of wood here and so forth, but you just put in what you like. I'm going to put in what I think would be useful to me here, just making a few marks, particularly some of the openings that I see here, like that. But I won't draw them all, just make an opening. I might add just change it. I'll put a doorway here and a window, maybe. So a window here. So I'm working my way around the building now. Let's make another opening here, and a little one here, maybe another one there. Remember, this side of the building is going away a little bit from you here, so and because my eye level is roughly up about here, a lot of what I'm drawing is more or less straight up here. Stick another door in here, maybe. Another window. These can be changed as you wish, as you paint, but there's nothing set in concrete about these. Right, we've got some openings here. Got a lot of broken boards. Yeah. So if you're doing this now, go ahead and have lots of fun producing a really dilapidated, but it's probably not going to be quite as dilapidated as this, because I'm trying to make this look as if it's a barn which is just about in use. So do I need to do any more at the moment? I can add things later on. Right. These openings are quite useful to me because, as is often the way in a painting, if I want something to appear brighter, then it's really helpful to put something dark behind it. So let's come back to that in a moment. I'm going to look at the what's going on behind here. I'll put this hill in, maybe make it a little, come down a little more extremely into the building. So let's just sort of put a hill in there and some trees. I think I'm going to add a distance there of some kind. We'll come back to that in a moment. So I've got some trees there. I've got these trees in here, and I won't worry about anything that's happening here because I can always add that later. And I'm going to be putting in, I'm going to bring in a bit of color there. So I'm going to bring in, this is going to be trees here a little bit more. So what I think I do want to do is I want to put my figure in. Now I'm going to have a man coming towards us, just one person, and he's going to be pushing a wheelbarrow. But because I remember the light's coming this way, because I want the light to catch him and for him to stand out in front of the barn, I'm going to make sure that his head has a background of the darkness of this opening here. And I'm going to make him about, what I often find quite useful is to sort of think about, I'm going to have the top of his head about here, and he's going to come down to something like this. So let's just put a man in here. He's probably got a heavy wheelbarrow, so not too big with a head. And when you're carrying a wheelbarrow, so you get a bit scrunched up. So he's a bit like that. The wheelbarrow, he's a bit like that. The wheelbarrow is, let's see if he's going to be, wheelbarrow is going to be something like that. A wheel here. And we don't see much more of him there. Yeah. That's the sort of fella he's going to be, something like that. That sort of size helps to push the barn back a bit, bring him forward. And I said that I wanted to play around with this fence a little bit. So again, I'm going to use the same little trick, if you like. And I'm going to put a post here, specifically with this dark doorway behind it. Again, with the light shining onto the post, I can help to try and emphasize that a little bit by having the dark behind it. And right, I don't think I'll get too worried about making it look too much like a post, but there's going to be some sort of, yeah, I really don't know what's happening here, but I'm going to turn my attention to this line running down the bottom of the barn. And if you look closely at your picture, I'll bring the big one out. It looks as if they've got bushes and things growing in front of the barn. Well, in the light that is in this photograph, they're quite flat. But if I maybe bring in some bushes here, I'm very conscious that I'm going to have light coming on here, light on this side of the building, and it's going to be going darker here. But this gives me interesting opportunities for catching a little bit of light on some of these bushes. Let's there's going to be some sort of machinery or something like that in there. I'm going to put in, I'm probably going to put in, I'll wait till the painting develops, but I'm probably going to put a sort of tree here or something like that. And maybe even another one there. But I'll wait till I see how the painting develops. And this is the foreground. So in my painting, I've got a foreground. I've got the middle ground, which now is pretty much the barn. And then I've got the distance here. So it's, if you like, a good traditional landscape. There we are. I'm just going to walk around my barn a little bit, put in any other little bits of information, maybe a few. I think I'll change this, a few broken bits and pieces. No, it's going to happen as I paint it, I think. And a lot of paintings do happen as you go through them. You're putting in things that work as the painting develops. So when you're doing a drawing, remember this is going away from you, so it's very steep here, angled here. This is going away from you a little bit, so it's not quite so steep. But even if you look up at this bit of you see this line here, that's very slightly going away from you down that way. So I've sort of put that in there. And thought about my foreground. I mean, you're free not to put anyone in. You're free to do it more as the photograph is. In other words, make it a fence, much more of a fence. And you're free to elaborate your barn, of course, and whatever else, just as you wish. But I'm going to hand over to you now. And what's very useful is if on the chat line you just say that you're ready, then I'll move on to the second step, which is to do with washes. But I'm going to leave that with you now and see how you get on with making your drawing. This is a autumn fall day, nice light coming down on the scene. Unlike the photograph, it's a strong, quite a warm light. I'm going to, as I said, change the sky, and I will sort of work downwards as I can. I've got my painting, incidentally, on a slight, I've got a little bit of wood under it. I prefer to work with things slightly upright. In fact, I would normally work with this completely upright, but just as a compromise with what we're doing with Zoom. So I've got water. Yeah, I'm using my big mop brush that I mentioned to you before. This is about a 1-inch brush, but any sort of brush that holds a lot of water. And I'm going to put the sky in and then move on. Now, with the sky, I'm going to make it a pretty blue sky, but I'm aware that I want to bring in a whole lot of color here, autumnal fall colors here. And so I'm going to have my sky looking a bit darker on the left and then getting a bit lighter here to allow these colors to work in. I'm going to use cobalt blue. Can you see? Let's just move this here. So I've got cobalt blue, a lot of water on my brush. Cobalt blue is one of my 3 blues. The other one is is cerulean, which is a cooler, greener blue, and then French ultramarine here, which is a redder, warmer blue. But I'll go for this this blue here, and I'm going to take this around here, move around the barn. Now, colours dry very much lighter with watercolour, so I'm going to make that stronger than here. Let's just put some of that strength in. So I'm working over wet paper, and I'll leave that. I just add some more water to that area there. Yeah. So we let the sky work its, the paint of the sky work its magic. I'm just getting a tissue out from here, and bring in some color now for a wash that I can put in here. I'm going to use those have been painted with me before. I've been using a lot of raw sienna, but I'm deliberately switching to this yellow ochre. It's pretty much the same color, not got quite so much yellow in it. So I'm going to put that as a light color down here, and let's just see. There's a lot of water on that at the moment. I think the secret here with these washes is to use a lot of water. Don't be frightened to use a lot of water. And I'll take that yellow ochre also across the barn to a large extent, and keep it wet, because I'll come in and bring in some other colors. So let's just bring that there. That's going to be quite a good base color that I'll use quite a bit here. And I want to bring some red into this barn, as if the whole thing were painted red. So I'll go to my crimson, which is this one. See this little crimson here, and I'll put some of that down very lightly here. That color, keep it light, and come back to that in a moment. No. Right, I bring in something a yellowy autumnal color. So if I go for, say, this is an Aurelian I'm using here, but it could be cadmium yellow or something like that. I'm just going to put a little bit of that down there. Let's see how that goes. That will be mixing in with the blues that are coming down. We'll just see what we'll do with that in a moment. I'm not quite sure how that's going to work. Coming on down to this part of the foreground. Right, what should we do? I'll go back to my yellow ochre and bring a little bit of blue into it. Let's just see, just a bit of blue. No, okay, all right, let's just pop some of that in here. And when I'm painting this on, I don't mind if I'm leaving little stretches of paper just unpainted at the moment here. Doesn't, yeah, particularly down in the foreground here. Right, everything's had a wash over it. Let's just see if I want to change. I might make that a little greener by let me see. Let me just play around with this for a moment, and then yeah, I just picked up a bit of Aurelian and a little bit of Cerulean and just dropped that in there a little bit. I'll see what that will do. It's just giving it a slightly different type of green, but we'll be working over the top of that. And here on the barn, I might add some, it's a fairly flat yellow ochre. So let's just go back to this crimson and emphasize that a little bit more in one or two places. And then down here, okay, I'm going to start playing around with a few colors. This is a color, light red. Burnt sienna is a pretty good equivalent. So I'm going to pick up a bit of light red. Again, I want to keep these quite light at the moment and just put in some of that here. And let's have a look. What shall I do? A little bit. This is burnt umber I'm mixing up here. Let's just get a little bit of that down here. I don't want to make it too dark, although this will be in the shade, and I'm happy for these to mix in with each other. We've just picked up some sort of colors there. I'm deliberately trying to keep this light, this area here light. I won't do anything else with that at the moment. I won't do anything else with that. How's it looking? I've got pretty much nothing much has gone on the roof here. This is all very light. This is potentially going to be light. I'll be making this a bit darker here. I've been putting some color into these trees at the backside. I've just taken some of the sky out of it, but it's fine. Right, that's me for my wash. I haven't put in any further information than that, just the light areas of the wash. This looks maybe a little bit too dark, but it'll be fine when it dries. And I've got some sort of redness behind here, which hopefully will suggest that the color that the barn used to be in its glory days, but no other details at all. Okay, so here I've got something, a color called neutral tint. Now, Lois has put these out in a little drawing that I supplied for her, annotated drawing as well, but I've run through them. This is neutral tint. And then I've got the burnt umber, raw sienna, burnt sienna is this that I've mentioned already, sort of browny one. And then raw sienna, which I haven't actually started using yet. It's very similar to this one down here, which I'll talk to you about in a moment. Then my reds, I've got two reds, a crimson, and then a more orangey red. And this one is Windsor, but cadmium red, even vermilion is a color that I used to use a lot. Then I've got three yellows, a new gamboge, which is a sort of earthy, an earthy sort of brown, browny yellow, a lot of red in it. Then there's a sort of middle of the road yellow, which is Aurelian, but cadmium yellow would be a similar one. And a lemon yellow, which is a sort of greeny, cool yellow. The three blues that I mentioned to you earlier are cerulean, which is a greeny, cool blue, cobalt, which is probably about the middle of the road type of blue, and then French ultramarine, which is a warmer, darker, redder sort of blue. So you get a kind of purpley tinge to this red at this end, and this cerulean, you get a kind of greeny tinge. Certainly if you put them next to each other. I have mauve here, which is, this one's a permanent mauve, but it's a mauve. Then a turquoise, which I put in a while ago, and I don't seem to have used very much. So maybe it will sort of work its way out of my palette at some stage. And then a color here, which I often call a convenience color. It's a green, sap green. Very convenient. I tend to use it often by putting it on the palette and mixing something else with it. It's again a kind of middle range green. And then I have a orange here. This is a Windsor orange, which I also find that I don't use a great deal of. Whether I'll use it today, I'm not quite sure, because we're doing a lot of orangey things in this, but we'll see. And then the two new colors I put in here, which I'm playing around with, I've used over the years, but not for some time, is light red, which is quite an opaque color, in fact. And then next to that is yellow ochre, which is very similar to raw sienna. Maybe a little less yellow in it, possibly, and maybe slightly cooler as well. But those are my colors. There's no white, there's no black, and there are lots of other colors, and you link up with pretty well any other artist, and they'll show you a whole different range of colors they're using. Although it'd be surprising that the main colors, often there are a number of colors which are very similar, the same. This third step, because the first step was, I sometimes think that there are 5 steps actually in this. The first one is the composition, working out in your own mind what it is that interests you in a particular source image or particular view that you're looking at, if you're doing it for real, whatever it might be, whether it's in the studio or whatever, or in your home, and thinking about the composition. Sometimes you could say that is the first step, and then the next one is drawing onto the paper, in which case there are 5 steps. But I kind of bundled the source image, the composition, and the drawing all into the first one. So we did that with the drawing. The second step was the washes, chucking down lots of water, light colors. If there's anything that you wanted to remain the white of the paper, then it's quite useful at that wash stage if you just leave that white. But there's nothing here that screams out to me that it's got to be white. And in any case, right at the end, in the final step, the tube of gouache here is very useful for just touching in 1 or 2 little highlights and things like that. So even if you wanted it to be the white of the paper and you painted over it by mistake, you can always come back to it. So we've done the wash, and now the third step is putting in darker colors. I use the phrase darker colors because that would include shadows as well as other colors, putting in I don't want to call them detail, because detail is really the last step, but putting in colors that are going to help you start to lift the painting, to make it look like something real that's happening. So darker colors here, and this, as much as I can, I'll try and work from down here and go downwards. One of the reasons why I like to work on an easel with a painting more or less upright is that I'm less likely to just run my hand over something I've just painted. But working on a flat, more or less flat table, as I've got it here, wherever possible, I'll try and work because I'm right-handed from top left down this way. It by no means does it always happen. Okay, just go back to what this is painting is all about. It's about an autumnal fall scene. We're bringing in that light to this painting, which doesn't exist. It's a very different kind of light in the source photograph. And I'm also thinking about, well, the sky's different. It's a very clear blue sky. I want to create a feeling of a bit of depth with what's going on back here, but I also want to tell a bit of a story about the trees that are turning, albeit that they are some distance away, but they're beginning to turn because of the nature of the season of the year that it is. So I'm going to bring in something which has got some sort of reddy orange in that, but it's by no means is it going to be as strong or as powerful as what I'm going to do up here, particularly this area here, which I think is going to tell the story largely about it being autumn. So I will, but I also, I think I mentioned to you, I've added something to this. I want to create the idea that there is a distance back here. And so one of the first things I'll do is I'll paint that distance in. I'll show you all how I do it in a moment. Paint in the trees here, and I may well do something about this hill here. I could leave it absolutely clear, but I think I'll sort of muddy it up or mess it up a bit as if there's something's going on. And then I talked about putting a tree in here. Well, I can do that later. I'll see how everything looks, and I'll see how things look before I put in something here. I'm not quite sure whether to go in and do this now or later. But when you're making a painting, I'm kind of talking through what's going on in my head. You're sort of thinking these things. There's no series of boxes you tick necessarily to get you to where you want to go. So quite often you're responding to things that you've done, and they don't always go according to plan, of course. Right, I'm going to move to a smaller brush now. This is also a mop brush, very similar to the other one. Yeah, this is a squirrel head brush, but they do some great imitation squirrel here. In fact, one I'm trying, this is a Raphael, which is really nice brush. That's imitation, so it's cheaper than even a squirrel, which isn't terribly expensive. I've actually sent off for a smaller version of this, but it hasn't arrived. So I'll use this. And the advantage with this is that it picks up water. You can get a good point to it, and you can also mess it up and you get all sorts of weird marks you can make with it as well, which may or may not prove useful in a moment. So I'm going to go for that distance there. Can you see what I'm doing? Cobalt and a little bit of this Windsor red. So I'll mix that. Now that's too red, a bit too red for me there. So add a bit of blue to it. So I'm going for a sort of mauvey color. Why didn't I just use this mauve? I'm not used to using that mauve. So I'll make that a little bit. It's going to be going over a little bit of blue there anyway. So let's put that in here as something in the distance. Is that going to be? It's probably going to be enough, I think. And then here, let's see what we can do. Do I want to use that? I'm just picking up what was there before. Maybe let's see what happens if I add some new gumbosh to it. Okay, it's sort of looking interesting. Let's just try that and put that in here. You know, I talked about messing up your brush. Well, you could do a little bit of that. I'm tending just to paint the tops of the trees, and I'll show you why in a moment. And bring them down here. Let's just. Okay, that's not bad, but I think that might prove a little bit light. So I'll go back to making it a bit darker. I'll maybe add a bit of light red to it, a tiny bit of blue, just and drop that in. Okay, underneath that, here, underneath where the trees are, let's I'm going to pick up some cobalt, add some cobalt to that, and maybe some light red, a bit more blue, and take this along the underneath the trees, and to give some idea of the bottom of where the trees are and how they disappear here. Do I want to make that any darker? Let's just make it a little bit darker, with a bit more cobalt and a little bit of light, a bit more blue at this stage, and just pop a couple of spots in here. There's a lot of water in here, and that's going to be painting its way into the wet stuff I put there. Now, light is shining down on here, and it, even at the distance, it's going to catch certain little trees. So I'm just using, you could use the end of a brush, I'm just using my nail here and doing just a few little marks like that, rather like sort of Moses parting the waters. It's just going to create the idea of some light coming down and touching those trees. I think I'll leave that for the moment. It's made a statement of some autumnal trees in the background, and then I've got this going on here, which gives me some idea of things going away from me. I said I'd talk about this area here. I think it's a bit too flat just at the moment. How am I going to deal with that? Let's just see if it's a mystery color is sometimes. So I've gone to my yellow ochre, and I've brought it onto here, and it sort of muddied it up a little bit, and just using a bit of a dry brush technique. Can you see there wasn't a it wasn't totally soaked in water, and it's running its way over the paper, the dry paper, and you're getting sort of marks left behind. Maybe that's fine. That's for the moment. That's all I wanted to do. You can paint it as you will. It suggests there's a bit of light coming onto that hill up there. Just a suggestion. A lot of this is going to have stuff painted over it, but I just wanted to mess it up. And you can see here where the wash we put on before, it is giving you the light lightness, and what I've just put on there is giving you a bit of darkness here. I don't want to overstate that because I want things to be stronger here, but I think it's probably made enough of a statement what's going on there. So now I hope I'm going at a, please let me know if the speed I'm going at is okay, because I'm even after this, I mean, normally I'd go on and carry on painting, but I'm deliberately just pausing a little bit here. I'm going to do something with this. So stay with trees for a little bit here, shall we? This is going to be much stronger autumnal fall colours than that is. Hopefully that gives you some idea of things being in the distance. Here I will, right, what colours am I going to play with? I've got these 3 yellows I told you about, which is New Gamboge, Aurelian, and lemon. Well, I'm not going to use lemon because it's too cold, I think, and I'm tempted to use some stronger, warmer yellows. So let's go to this New Gamboge. You could, if you haven't got a color like that, you could use, say, something like Aurelian or cadmium yellow and add just a little bit of red to it, because it's sort of, it has got more red in it. I'm going to be dropping some red into it anyway. So let's just remember the light's coming down here, although we don't need to worry about that too much at the moment. So I think I'm using my brush here. Just as a child might use it in a sense, just to give me marks that I would find difficult to paint normally. Here, I'm conscious that it's all quite wet at the moment. So let's, I'm going to go back to my gamboge here and add some light red to it. This is a color I'm trying to get to know all about. I quite like it. And let's bring some of that in here. Now, we don't need to paint over everything we've already done. We're just bringing in some here, and a lot of it will soften itself, will paint itself in, because there's still water on the page. But and if I'm going to leave any of the other yellow showing, I'm trying to leave it on the side where the light might be shining down. Can you see something like that? I've got a feeling I could be coming back and doing something in the next stage with detail. So that's thrown in a whole lot of interesting colors there. I think at this stage I will also I want to make, remember I talked about how you can make things look light when you put dark against them. Well, I'm still thinking of doing that. So the darkness that's here is going to help the light that we see going here. So I'm going to let's pick up some French ultramarine and put that in here. Maybe a bit more. Yeah, a bit more blue. And again, I'm not painting over everything I've just painted. I'm just dropping in particularly down this end, because I think this looks as if it, where's my photograph gone? This looks as if this could be a sort of dark bit hidden by all these trees. So let's just a bit more blue at this stage. And I can remember that little thing we did up here with the old fingernail. Okay, just make a few little marks there. And I think what I will also do is I'll use my rigger brush whilst things are still wet. And it's not achieving much. Let's leave it at that for the moment. I'll come back to that a little bit later. So I've established that there are autumnal, vibrant, coloured leaves here, which is going to help to create the effect of the light coming in here. So I'm going to move on to the barn in just a moment. And here we can have a lot of fun. We want to take it as far as we can without going into the exact details, which we're going to do later on. And I want to work around what I can see of this figure here, and around the post, and yeah. Give me a moment just to work out what I'm going to do. This is a yellow ochre and light red. Now that's gone very red, and this is all in shade here. So let's add some cobalt to that. Pretty much everything I'll do on this side of the building is going to be in shade. So and I want it to sort of come across dark here to allow the vibrancy of the light here and on here. So I've ended up mixing a sort of browny color here. Let's put some of that on. This brush is great because you can take it to a point, and there we are. So I think if you sort of watch what I'm doing for a while, and then you sort of get an idea. Amazing how opaque this light red is. I haven't used it for a while, so let's add some. I want to darken it at this point here and bring in some darkness there. It's not the finished article in terms of the detail, but I need to establish quite a bit of the light and darks that are going on in here. So let's bring some of that down to here. And when you're painting, I'm quite happy to leave little gaps showing. It may be that they will be helpful, or that I will come back at some stage and paint over them, but you're not necessarily painting as if you're painting your living room wall here. So I'm going to make that a bit darker just at this stage. I'll go back to my ultramarine blue and pop that in some places here. And I've created this sort of, it's a sort of darker shadow color. I'll bring that up along here. All right. It's there are lots of planks. We can define those planks even better when we come to our details, but I'm leaving various marks here. I think I'll bring that. Where's my roof here? I'm quite keen. I've managed by accident just to leave a little bit of light here of the paper, and that's quite interesting, because it's going to help me define, have some sort of light catching the edge of the barn. But I'll be able to accentuate that later on when I put this tree in. So I'm just taking it up to here for the moment. It's gone a sort of different kind of a different type of brown, which I'm happy with that. And I'll put
Mike, someone's asking, could you just revise the make and size of your mop brush, please?
Right, this one I'm using is a Rosemary & Co. A series, I can just read it, series 170, and its size is 0. In fact, I'm going to get something in between these two sizes. I've sent off for it, but I'm going to get it as a imitation squirrel one, but smaller than this. I can't remember what the size is, but I just wanted to have something smaller than that. Smaller, but maybe a little bit bigger than this. But this is doing the job really well here. Now I've got lots of wet paint on here, and whilst it's wet, let's I'm going to pick up. This is where you can sort of improvise. I've gone to some burnt umber, and I'm just going to drop that's just a little bit of warmth on here on wet paint with strong color. I think if I brought in very wet paint on that, then I would get those blossoms and blooms we were talking about. But generally, if you can bring in strong paint on a surface that's already got water, you don't need to have a lot of water here. So I'm right. I think I'll add this as a background color quite a bit here. I'll come back with details a bit later on. You see this, I want this to be darker, but I can do that in the next step. I can do that. I'm just anxious not to have a building that looks flat and that all the same. It's affected by the light. It's affected by age, and all sorts of other things. So let's just have a look at see what I'm doing here. If I come down to here, there is all sorts of rubbish and stuff lying around at the base of this. Let's go to some French ultramarine blue, and I'll just pop in some sort of a window you can see through there, but we'll come back and make it darker later. So on we go with building art. We're sort of literally building this barn with that fella's head. Don't make his head too big. That is a common mistake in drawing figures, that you kind of make your heads look too big and round, and they look a bit one in there for the moment. Right, I'm going to add some burnt sienna to this just to change the colors a little bit down here as we move away down the barn. There's lots of rubbish, like lots of barns. I mean, they've got hedges, they've got bushes and things, but they've also got things hanging around, bits of machinery, you name it. So I'm not following slavishly the photograph, and there's no reason I would suggest why you need to do the same. I'm just sort of building my barn. Let's go back to popping in some, and I got strong paint here. I'm just going to put that in here. This sort of suggesting some sort of shadow and overhang. But because I'm using strong paint, although it's still wet, I'm not getting the blooms taking place. This is really important when you're doing watercolor. You're aware of the water, not only on your brush, but importantly, what's on the paper. And so, you know, for instance, if a lot of this is still wet, if I decided I wanted to bring in another color, and I picked it up with a lot of water and put it on that, boom, I get the bloom. Not saying there's anything wrong with blooms or blossoms, but I don't necessarily want them at this stage. Right, hopefully all of you guys are working along. I haven't used any black yet. I'm making darker colors by using ultramarine blue and bringing in some sort of brown or red or something like that. Let's just drop in some stronger paint here to suggest the overhang. I'm quite keen to, you may be just beginning to see that I'm getting a bit of light catching the edge of this here. That's something I'm quite keen to have. Let's put a doorway in here. Window here. I don't know how old this barn is. I wonder when it was built, but it's certainly a superb old barn, right? And this line that I talked about right at the start of the painting, where we're kind of seeing bushes and things breaking the surface into the barn. So when you're painting, just leave lots of little areas here so that we can make it look as if things are in front of the barn here. All right, let's move over here. I'm going back to this side here, and I think my brush has got quite dark, so let's go back and pick up some raw burnt umber. I don't have raw umber here. Raw umber is pretty much the same as burnt umber, except raw umber is bluer and cooler, and burnt umber has got more red in it. Right, let's so I'm using sort of I'm just trying to create an underlying color, a sort of background color of this browns here, still allowing some of the reds to show through, and then I will bring in some darker colors. I've got to my ultramarine blue. Let's lots of silence, but I'm sure everyone's working really hard at this. This is the most tricky and detailed part of the painting, without a doubt. I'm heading towards this area where it's light. Make that a bit darker. So when I want to make things darker, I tend to go to the ultramarine blue and add a bit of light red to it, say, just at this stage. Right, what's happening around the corner? Around here. Oh, didn't want that to happen. No worries. Okay, this is where the light is coming down on the building, but there is an overhang to this building here. So let's pick up a shadow color. So I'm going to make this a bit blue. I'm adding cobalt to whatever I've got here, and because of the strong light we got on here, things are happening slightly differently. And you're getting more contrasts. This is the shadow of the overhang. Coming down, there's a window here. I'll come back to that moment. Let's bring in, the less I put in here, the lighter it's going to be. So this doorway that I popped in here just to help to show up the post. Might be quite good to do something with that. And I think there's going to be some sort of shadow from these trees. So let's take that. Let's take that down here a little bit more, shall we? I'm going to drop in something a bit darker here. So go back to my ultramarine blue, tiny bit more light yellow, too much, gone too brown, and let's just put that. Right, we're getting close to finishing on the barn where I want to be at the moment. There's too much, a bit too much light coming through at the moment, but I'll deal with that in a moment. I'll come, yeah, I'll deal with this. Do I want to do any more here? No, I'm not going to do any more to the moment for that. That can be all done with details. So I'm looking now at the foreground that I want to put in here before we give it a rest and come back with all the details. Oh, there is one other brush that I'm going to use that I haven't mentioned to you. Ah, right. It's this brush. Oh, I don't know why I didn't think of this one. This is called a sword. I've got a smaller one somewhere. Not seen, and it's like a sort of big bulky rigger in that you can get some really points, good points to this, and a lot of people use these for lettering and things like that, believe it or not. But one of the things I like about it is not only does it hold water, this is a squirrel one, in fact. Not only does it hold water and go to a point, which of course, you know, so do these and everything, but the lines and marks you get with it, as you'll see when I'm using it in a moment, are almost out of control, unpredictable. And you're getting marks which are marks that you're keeping your fingers crossed and you're hoping they're going to work. But you'll see how I'll use this in a moment, why a brush like this can be quite useful. So I'm sorry, I didn't mention that I was going to use that. I'll come to that shortly. Okay, I want to bring something green in here to sort of make the grass a bit greener. But I'm also aware that I've got shadow that's being cast by this building a bit, because we're looking down on it. We're going to see some shadow there. I haven't put that in at the moment, but I will do it in a second. So let's just pick up my big mop brush again here and go to yellow ochre, you see there, and add cobalt to that. So yellow and blue is going to make green. Do I want it any more green than that? Okay, it's possibly a bit sludgy, that green. So I'm going to go to this convenience sap green I've got here, which is basically some kind of a mixture between the mid yellow and a cobalt, if you haven't got it. So I'll just bring that in. I don't know if this is going to just bring that in here a little bit. It makes it a little less muddy green. And let's see what we get here. Yeah, that's probably going to be fine. Yeah, I'll use that for some of these bushes or something that are growing here. This area is flooded in light here, and I want to do a relatively minimum amount of painting. So I'm using dry brush strokes here to, as I come forward here, just to allow as much light to come through as is possible. So let's, right, that's probably where I'm going to get my green from. Do I want to do anything more? No, I don't think at the moment. I do. Is that enough? Yeah, is that enough, really? If anything, I'll keep this area as light as I can. I think that's established that I've got some grass and greenery and stuff like that there. Do I want anything else? I think not. I think there's plenty there for me to play with. I've left the man as much as I can, and yeah, and the post. This area here, I think I mentioned that there's quite a lot of rather too pinky colours showing through. So what I think I'm doing before I go on to my final stage, I'm going to get rid of some of that by pick up some cleanish water, bringing some blue in. It's just a bit of blue and a little bit of light red, so it's a sort of grey colour. Let's just see if if I do something like that at this stage, and it's not all going to be the same. Make that a bit darker, a bit more blue, a bit of red, too much, too brown. Okay, and and that's all going to dry in a moment, and we're going to come over that. I just wanted to take away the these bits that are coming out too light here. Yeah. There we are. Yeah, that will do. So I've taken now, we've added darker colors. This third step started off with bringing in the background, trying to use these, make the colors distant and lighter a little bit here. I messed up this hill a little bit. It was just a bit too flat for me. Brought in these colors here, which are essentially what's going on here, but much closer. And because I'm quite keen to have the light coming here. This is all a bit too light at the moment. We'll deal with that in a moment. And then spend time sort of deconstructing or constructing, whichever way you want to call it, the barn. We've still got details to go in it, just to make it sing a little bit more, but leaving this area to show that the light is coming in on it. And then I mixed up a sort of greeny color. Well, it wasn't by no means is it a bright green. I used yellow ochre, a bit of cobalt, and in fact I then added a little bit of this sap green here, because I felt it was just a little bit too muddy and brown, so it's just picked it up, and I swept that across there, leaving lots of little gaps, but keeping this area, because I know the light's coming down on here, a little bit lighter. And the thing I didn't do, I could have done, but I think I'll do it in the next stage, is brought some shadow here, and I'll do that all in the details that I'm going to construct, and of course do the man and the post and the foreground. I'm going to add something that's a different kind of green here, I think. Quite like this play of greens, this red. Someone was talking about playing warm and cool colors and everything, but I'm also quite like the idea of playing complementary colors. So you've got the complementary or opposite color of red is green. So you've got green here, but the sort of readiness of this, I'll bring in some green, and that might make this feel even redder. So I'm going to bung a tree up here in a, I suppose if I had Viridian, I could go to that, but I don't tend to use Viridian very much, and I haven't got it anyway. So the color that I think I'm going to use is, well, let's go to my, this one here. Okay, that's, but it's just too bright and flatter green. So I think if I, greens are so difficult colors to work. If I add some cobalt to that, but what's that give me? Yeah, that's getting closer to what I want. So I've used this sap green and I brought in some cobalt. Now, if you don't have sap green, you could use a sort of middle yellow and cobalt and probably bring more cobalt into it. So that's going to be possibly the lightest part of my this tree here, and the light's coming down this way, remember, so there's going to be darker on the side and the back. So if I, how's that looking? Oh, I don't know about that. That's a bit too bright. Let's put a bit more cobalt with it. Yeah, let's just see. So this is going to be, I'm going to make this tree up, I think. When I spoke to you about this little bit of light running down the edge of the barn here. So if I do, can you see how I'm just allowing that to sort of come up here? Right, I've popped that in here. So let's put some shadow in. So here I think I'll let's go to my neutral tint. I don't know if that's jumping in too quickly with it. Let's have a look and put some of that here. Some neutral tint down this side. Drop in a couple of splodges of it there. All right, and whilst I'm operating down there, let's do something. I'm not sure quite what's going on there, but I've just lightened it a bit and dropped a bit of neutral tint down the bottom and let that sort of paint itself for a moment. I will come back to that. Okay, I'm going to put a tree in here. I'm coming in with my autumnal colours a little bit now, so go back to some of those. I want this to be another sort of autumnal one. So what did I use? I used this new gamboge, didn't I? Let's take that in, add a bit of light red to it maybe. And I'm going to do much the same here. That's quite light. I think I need to make that a bit stronger, so I'll do that in a moment. Let's just put a different kind of tree. Yeah, let's make that a bit stronger. So go back to my use stronger colors, less water, stronger colors, and I'm going to do the same thing here with the darkness, but I won't use neutral tint. I think that wouldn't work with it. So let's try some burnt umber, a little bit of ultramarine blue with that. A bit more. Let's see what that gives me. Right, I want that to be a bit darker, so I'll go back to my ultramarine blue, burnt umber. So I've got something quite dark there. Let's just pop in one or two dark bits. So whilst it's wet, then you can use that for the paint to work itself. It'll do the painting for you, in effect. So I just wanted I wanted this to be clearly a different sort of green. This is coming back to some of the autumnal. This is obviously a coniferous type thing that we got there. Let's play with this bit area whilst I'm doing that. I've got some of these dark colours here. I don't know if I need to do anything else here. Just go back and make another dark one with the ultramarine blue and the burnt. My rigger in play, and put a few little branches maybe. Okay. And also with the barn, the roof of the barn, let's have a crack at that. Pick up this yellow ochre. I don't want to do too much here because there's quite a lot of bright light on that, but let's just see if I do something like this, so that some of the light shines through.
What color are you using for the?
I was just going to my yellow ochre and just popping, yeah, a little bit like I did there, but just messing it up a little bit. Yeah, okay, we'll see what that does. I just didn't want it to be a completely flat, light color. Right, let's have a look at the barn. We're doing okay, and here I'll a combination of, I think, the small mop and a rigger. Now I'll see if I can do this by just working dark colors. So I'll go say burnt umber, ultramarine blue. That's going to give me quite a dark sludgy color. If I need to darken it anymore, I can add some neutral tint. Let's just see how much I can get away with by doing this. I'll work my way through. So this is, remember, this just little details which hopefully will, I get a sort of combination of one brush and the other, just flicking between the two, make that a bit darker. A few suggestions of boards. I'll try and do this as quickly as possible without repainting the whole of the barn, which something I don't want to do. I'm also conscious I've got the shadow to bring in here. I'm surprised I haven't done it already, but I'll do it in a moment. I'll add some neutral tint to that one there. So these little harder edged details hopefully will give a little more presence to the barn than it's enjoyed up until now. There's just a little bit of I'm working from left to right because I'm right-handed and I'm leaning up against this this painting. When you're doing a line of something, whether it's a line or like this, it's a line or whatever it is, there's this great expression called lost and found, where instead of painting the line as it is like that, just do little bits of it. So the eye's being led along the line, but it's not necessarily making it a flat line. This dark space here, I particularly make it dark where the light, I'm going to have some light on his head, but I can leave little bits, it doesn't have to be a flat, it's just little bits of light in it, especially suggesting that it's darker on one side than the other. Got lots of broken. We're doing fine, we're moving around the barn. Let's just make this area up here a little bit darker. What's it look like? Okay, it goes down to about there. It's quite a dark area, this little bit at the top. Very much out of sight. Okay, and just use my finger to soften some edges. We're getting there. Going back to my neutral tint, a bit of blue in it, something quite dark up here. Just emphasizing that a little bit. So I hope your barns are all coming on fine. It's just giving it a little more oomph by putting in these details. Another dark entrance. I don't know what it is that I put leaning across there, but maybe I could give that some colour later on. That takes us around to here, to the sunny side of the barn. Let's pop in a bit of darkness to that window. There's another little window there. Emphasize the dark maybe a bit more. Whilst I'm here, just one or two little details. Fence or two, post. Right. Okay, I think I'm going to bring in some shadow here and then complete the rest of it. Shadow. Right, let's go to the cobalt blue. I want it to tie in with this. This is where I'm just wondering, maybe I should have done it when I did it all together, but I've got a cobalt blue there, and a little bit of Indian red maybe. Is that going to be enough? Let's put some of that down here. See how that looks there. Take some of that into the trees. Okay, that's all right. What do I want this to play? It's not going to come out very far. This shadow, it's sort of kind of like that, I wonder. And whilst that's wet, I think I'll just make one or two little bits a little bit stronger cobalt, stronger light red, and it can work its way around. It's all very very wet at the moment. Okay, turn my attention to this fella. Let's give him some sort of skin color. I'll go to burnt sienna, something like that. He's probably got bare arms, something like that. Okay, and we'll give him a pretty white sort of shirt, so I'll pick up some of that shadow color that I was playing with and drop that down there for the moment. It's got more or less a white shirt. Just dark trousers. I don't think we see much of what's going on. Okay, the wheelbarrow. I'm just picking up some dark colors I've got here. The sun's coming this way, so let's give some of the wheelbarrow here. Just pushing the wheelbarrow. I'll come back to him in a moment. The post, I'll give it some sort of brown color, and some sort of shadow down the back of it. Come back to that in a minute. Right, here I'm moving now to this big brush here, and I'm gonna mix up a series of greens and browns here. So I'll go to my yellow ochre that I've used before, and I'll start off by putting a little bit of this green in here. So let's, you can see this is a really interesting brush. We're going to, there's a lot of roughness out here. He's probably taking something there and dumping it. There we got something. And I'm almost into sort of abstract marks here. As things go up in the foreground, I don't want to make too much of the. I'll put this green down, so I'm going to pick up my Indian red. Oh, it's a bit too red, that. So let's add some burnt umber to it. And create, again, that question someone asked about, were you going to put in your warm and cool colors and everything? Well, here I'm deliberately putting in something warm in the foreground, just to bring it to the foreground, bring it to the front a little bit. All right, so there's I hope you know what I mean when I'm saying it. These marks are almost abstract. Let's just bring in a darker green. So I'll pick up some of the, quite often when you find the palette, you're just using what's lying around. So I'm going to go for this something darker green and just something a bit darker there. I need to emphasize this man a bit more because he's getting a bit lost in there. And I think I've got very little more to do to this. I just need to make that stronger, the man stronger, and some of this a bit stronger, but it's a little bit too wet here. So I'm just going to give it a whiz with the hairdryer. And come up with a darker color here. I'll go to ultramarine blue and some light red, say. Yeah, a bit more blue. And let's see. That post isn't looking very impressive. So let's see if we can do something with that. Soften that line a bit. Okay, so I'm going to my dark color that I've mixed here, which I use ultramarine blue and light red, and just see if it's too wet. The man needs and his wheelbarrow needs reinforcing a little bit. I might pop a little bit of white on him in a moment, and on his wheelbarrow. I'll just leave him. He's standing out there. And do I need to emphasize one or two little points here? Let's have a fence here of some kind. A few little marks. This is a broken fence. And I think I'm really, it's one of the cases, I think with this one, I'll I'll go and have a cup of tea and come back and see what more needs doing to it, if anything. But I will do one thing for you just before I go. And having mentioned it to you, this white gouache, I can't think of where else I really need to put it other than maybe a little bit. Touching the top of his head, and maybe that's enough. Yeah, just to pick him out a little bit. Oh, I know. So I know it's not dry yet. Let's just put a wee bit on the post.